Mr. Ramirez was told he was not under arrest, and yet he was refused use of the bathroom. That's a violation of civil rights.
You can wait and address this at trial.
Oh, I would like to address it now. I'm just saying...
Mr. Israel.
If guards in this courtroom would not allow you to use the bathroom, you would, by all definition, be detained.
I'm going to hold you in contempt if you continue to pursue this.
You're asking me to obey an erroneous court decision, and you tell me to wait. In my experience, wait.
Okay, find you in contempt.
Voluntary manslaughter, it's a good deal.
It's an enema of sunshine.
Sorry for
Taking a nanosecond off of your assembly line rubber stamp existence. Hello?
Everybody looking at you crazy.
Roman Israel, we'll talk about what to expect if you are arrested.
We're gonna rap. I don't mean hip-hop. I'm sorry. Why are the sisters standing and the brothers sitting?
That's gendered and sexist.
And polite.
And patronizing.
And polite.
This law firm has run a deficit for years.
You're firing me?
You were a cornerstone of activism. You're inspiring.
I'm tired of doing the impossible for the ungrateful.
You gotta make a living. Take care of yourself.
I am.
I know where CJ's hold up. What's that worth?
A lot.
Don't tell nobody.
Everything we discuss will be confidential. The man who did it, I know where he is. I want the reward, cash. The world is full of wonderful things.
Well, what do you think?
When can I move in?
I just heard something about you from a solid source.
You knew where I was.
God!
I got you. Anytime I want.
God!
These are dangerous people. Roman, I'm concerned about you.
I went to war last night. I've been dealing with depression ever since an adolescent. I can never.
You don't just walk away from this.
I can never take the lead. I can never.
I'm not walking away. I could finish this. Each one of us is greater than the worst thing we've ever done.
Dan Gilroy. Guys, thanks so much for being here. Good to see you again. Thanks for coming back. Congratulations, I love the film. It's an incredible work. It's another sort of great story that hits at the heart of something in our society that needs to be talked about, again, done by you, Dan. So talk to me, after Nightcrawler, what made you want to go after the criminal justice system, and how did you find this story within that?
So after Nightcrawler, I wanted to recreate the experience of making a film that was entertaining, hopefully, and engrossing, but actually said something about my world point of view. That was an experience that I had in Nightcrawler that I very much wanted to recreate. So I had always had the idea of, or the interest that, I remember the 1960s. In the 1960s, there was this great spirit of activism, civil rights, women's rights, anti-war movement. And I've seen, we've all seen over the last 4 decades, that spirit just utterly evaporate to the point of almost nothing. I don't judge people for not being involved anymore. People have lives. They make their own individual decisions. But I became interested in the idea of a person who never left the 1960s. Somebody who just for 4 decades stayed in the trenches, never sort of wavered in anything they believed in. Where would they be now? And what I found was, the small group of them actually drifted, many of them, to civil rights law and supported themselves through criminal law. And the character started to form. So I started, the story started to take me into the world of the criminal justice system, which ties into my world, the worldview, is what a great need there is for reform, how problematic it is, how neglected it is. So all of my instincts of wanting to sort of transmit an idea came out through the story.
And then how did you come to the character of Roman J, and how did you present that to Denzel Washington, and how did you guys work together? Because like Nightcrawler, even though a much better man, you create this sort of fascinating character built off of tics and quirks and amazing idiosyncrasies that I think most leading roles in movies wouldn't allow.
I mean, some of it was certainly on the page. I mean, the guy worked in a back room. He's socially awkward. He's not the guy who sort of comes out in the front and really does any of the cases up front. But Denzel very much created the idiosyncrasies. I mean, Denzel gained 40 pounds for the script. He picked the glasses. He picked the clothes. He picked that beautiful burgundy suit, which I think is going to become very hot after this film comes out. He picked the earphones with the little foamy things. I mean, he decided he only ate peanut butter sandwiches over the sink. He wore... The walk that he does is because he's wearing shoes that are 2 sizes too big. The glasses are so thick that he can't see through them. So when he's playing a scene with those glasses, often the world is just a blur to him. This is Denzel's process.
Where do you fit into that process? How long is the process before you get on set for the first day? Is he telling you that he's coming up with these ideas as you go along? Or is it like day one, all right, Denzel, come out of your trailer, and you're like, we got 2 shoes on that are 2 sizes too big. What's going on here?
I wrote the script for Denzel. I always wanted to work with Denzel. As 6 months before we started shooting, Denzel and I started talking. And it was really, I'm a second-time director. He's coming to me and go, who are you? And I'm asking, who are you? We're talking about the script, each other. He is coming over those months. I'm going to grow my hair out. I'm going to come up with these glasses, things like that. Once we go on the set, my job as a director, I very much looked at, I wanted to create a space that he felt comfortable creating it. He's a massive talent. I never looked at my job of, that's not enough, or that's too much. It was never like that. It was very much, we decided early on, he wasn't going to tell me how to direct, and I wasn't going to tell him how to act. And that's not to say that if I saw something cataclysmic going on, I wouldn't have spoken up, but I never remotely saw anything like that. As a matter of fact, every day was a joy to watch this character come to life. And to be honest, that's how I worked with Carmen and with Colin as well. I mean, you hire talented people to flesh out a character that really is in many ways underwritten, I think.
And it's testament to your confidence as a writer-director, I think. I've worked with a few people that have written and directed, and sometimes they get very precious about their words and they don't want anyone to change, and they feel, they really have to sort of latch on because it's such a full in creation in their heads, and then sometimes people are so confident about what they've done and they're confident in their casting that they allow you to have free reign on the day, and that's when I feel most excited and most sort of liberated to play. And I think the same was true of Denzel, and to actually work opposite him with that kind of freedom was really just such a joy.
Your character is a contemporary, current activist versus, this activist from the 1960s. Arguably, he's still an activist, but in the courtroom. What kind of research did you do? Because Dan had said that he left it open for you guys to sort of figure out your character. So what did you find by sort of looking at some of these contemporary activist organizations? How did you flesh out your character?
Well, in some ways, a lot of my research had been done working on Selma several years prior, because I got to meet a lot of young activists and a lot of the generation of activists that Roman would have been akin to. And so coming into this film, I think I brought a lot of that information with me. And like Dan, the reform of the the criminal justice system is something that I'm very sort of aware of and try to keep sort of on top of. So in terms of material and in terms of content, I just sort of brought my own bank of knowledge, to be honest. And then in some ways different from other characters, perhaps, there was something that was just very personally resonant in the material and in the character of Maya. There was just something on the page that Dan had brought to life that felt very truthful and very honest, and it was about what happens when one wants to live a pure life and has that sort of sense of connectivity to everyone around them and lives in a space of empathy always, which tends to be what I feel is my sort of journey. So research aside, I just had a very personal connection and gut response to the material and to the character of Maya.
She's a person who's sort of desperate to not grow cynical in any way.
Absolutely, and anyone that's tried that, even as an artist, as an actor, it's
right
incredibly difficult in this climate to remain, to remain sort of positive in that regard. And so, I think for that reason, she's going to be a character, as with Roman, who also has that same journey in the film. I think it's going to be, this is a perfect time for any audience to really connect and feel some kind of personal empathy and resonance with the journey that these characters are on. I'm sure of it.
Dan, you have this wonderful scene between Carmen and Denzel having dinner together, and Carmen beautifully performs this scene where she gets upset. But I want to ask you about one shot in that scene that I loved so much. I don't even really have a question for you about it. I just want to tell you that I love this shot, which is from the side of Denzel's face and the focus pull that you have going on there and seeing sort of through his glasses. Where did that shot come from, and what did you feel like it was saying about that scene?
So that's an example of working with really talented people. I am blessed to work with a cinematographer named Robert Elswit.
Oh, well, yes.
Robert Elswit shot many of Paul Thomas Anderson's movies. He shot Boogie Nights, There Will Be Blood. I mean, this is a very talented guy that I'm very lucky to work with. So that day we were shooting the scene. The scene is about Roman is very isolated at that moment, thematically, emotionally. He's disconnected himself from everything that sort of came before. And Carmen is having a conversation that's dragging him back to that. And we were shooting the scene, and Robert Elswit came up to me and he goes, so that's almost like the angle that we shot from, was the other side. And Robert said, it's a very interesting angle from the back through his glasses. And he said, we could rack focus. So rack focus is when you start on one thing and you pull back and you focus on something else. He goes, it's very interesting if we rack focus off Carmen and come back to him, really isolate him in the frame. Everything becomes blurred around him and he's just alone. And we tried it, and we shot it. And actually it was an extended take. I think it takes up about 45 seconds, this one shot.
It's beautiful. You hold the isolation for so long.
Yeah, very tight on the side of his face. And it's a very effective shot that Robert Elswit really found. We then used it 2 other times in the film. It became a bit of a recurring aesthetic that we started to do. And then the sound design people took that shot. Once we had isolated him, we started distorting the sounds around him. He was retreating into his own world. The pressure of his life and what he had done and where he was trying to figure out he was going was just so overwhelming to him. And I'd be honest, when I watched it, when I feel in crisis over things, I feel that way. I feel very alone, and I feel the world has become slightly distorted. So I like that. I do like that shot.
Yeah, it's an incredible moment in the film. You have there's another moment in the film that where we see a little bit of it in the trailer, where Roman is giving a speech to a group of young activists, and what we see is sort of gender politics getting in the way of what he's trying to talk about, and his sort of dismissal of I don't necessarily think he says it out loud, but he has an inherent dismissal of those gender politics.
He says it out loud.
He does say it out loud, as something that aren't as important as, you know, the criminal justice reform that he may be working on or thinking about. What did you think about the scene, and what were you thinking about when you were?
Well, I mean, activism is generational. It gets passed down. It's a flame. It gets down, and different generations interpret activism in different ways. Roman comes from a time, from the '60s, where it was national movements. And the idea back then was, oh, we all share this common thought process, and we're all going for a common goal. I think you'll find that today's generation will question both those things. Do we share the same thought process? Are we going for the same goal? It's a much more individual process. It's community-based. It's neighborhood-based. It's interpersonal-based. And when Roman comes into this world, he does not understand it. And for him, when he says, why don't the guys stand to let the girls sit? And they say it's gendered and sexist. To them, it is gendered and sexist. Why would you assume that? He says, why would you assume that I can't speak for myself and say I want to sit down? And Roman has a point in the sense that he says it's polite. It's a generational thing. Older guys look at it that way. Younger women don't look at it that way. I'm not in any way trying to comment that one is more right than another. I'm just trying to show that Roman is now at this point disconnected from the world that's going on. And honestly, I think in many ways he instigates the argument by saying, we got a Sarah and Soul Sister in the band. Now that's not the most politically correct, accurate thing to say to somebody in the midst of an activist meeting. So it sort of brings it on himself to a degree, you know?
Yeah. Do you think Roman's his own worst enemy in a lot of ways?
Roman's greatest gift and his greatest liability is that he's absolutely unwavering and will not give an inch on anything he thinks resembles injustice. And it bites him on the ass often. He cannot keep his mouth shut. And I admire that. I mean, the person who literally, most of the times that we will sort of, for whatever reason, not actually speak our mind, I so admire people who just go, no, that's not right, and I'm going to call you on it. And because he doesn't have friends. He doesn't have a social life. He lives alone. There is no societal cost anymore that he can pay for speaking his mind. I think often
he's paid it.
He's paid it. It's done. And that's where you find him at the beginning of the film. Yeah. He's alone.
Carmen, this is sort of a hacky question. What is it like working with this other actor? But Denzel Washington is Denzel Washington, and he is also doing something in this film that we've never seen him do before. You know, he's known for, his last film was Fences, which is a big, beautiful performance filled with that sort of like Denzel Washington swagger that we get, you know? And with this, he's sort of taken all of these things that we know him from as an actor and pushed it inside, and it's still there, but it's different. You know?
Yeah, that's testament to his his adaptability and his range, that I can't really imagine at this point that there's anything he can't do.
That was my feeling watching the movie. I was just going,
Yeah.
Jesus, Denzel Washington can do anything.
Really. And he's so demanding of everyone around him, which I think keeps his game as high as it could possibly be, and means you have to bring your A game as well. You know, he's fully immersed. Listening to him talking over the past several days about his process, it's so clear to me that he just approaches it in a really organic and very sort of heartfelt, gut sort of way. So I get the impression that every experience is going to be different for him. It's all, you know, just he's very present in that sense. And yeah, to work with him on set was great. Every take felt different. It was always moving forward. There wasn't a day that he came to set that I felt like I knew what was going to go down. And there wasn't.
That's a good thing.
That's a great thing. And it also speaks to the fact that he is forever mining and searching for, you know, ways to get deeper into character. You know, I sometimes you sort of work with someone, you get the feeling that they've sort of conjured something and they then go with that. And I just felt every day that he was never satisfied, that there was more to be had, more to figure out. Almost like the theatre actor in him, perhaps, that, you know, every performance, every night is going to feel a little different and there's a new way to get deeper into character. So he lived up to my expectations.
Dan, do you feel like at a certain point when you're, you know, you let your actors go that you're kind of just sort of documenting their work at that point?
That is how I feel, and that's actually how I want to feel. There's so much going on behind the scenes that requires so much attention that when you, and what Carmen just said is true. Every day we showed up, I didn't know what you were going to do. I didn't know exactly what Colin was going to do. We had talked about it. I certainly didn't know what Denzel was going to do. And I agree with you about the theater thing. I've seen a lot of people come up and ask Denzel, I want to be an actor, what should I do? And Denzel always says, start with theater. Do it with theater. And, you know, theater, you've done it. I mean, every night is different. Every performance is different. And Denzel, and I think what it does, I've never done theater, I'm not an actor, I would imagine you're very focused on everything. From the moment Denzel comes on the set, there's extreme focus of, not a focus of emotion, focus of currents of thought. Let's not lose that. Where were we going with that? And he'll bring it into the performance, and it's really amazing.
I have to say as well, though, the writing, Dan wrote the script and directed, obviously, and there's something so pure in the words, which you don't always get. And it doesn't surprise me that this is material that you haven't just researched and found to be interesting. It's something that you grew up immersed in the 60s, that if you have such heartfelt connection to this material. So as an actor, when you show up, the idea of being entirely present when you've got that kind of material to work with is not such a crazy notion. And it doesn't happen actually as much as you would imagine. You know, sometimes writing can be really excellent, but contrived, or it doesn't feel, you know, it can be entirely sort of, you know, it can have an intellectualism about it that isn't really of the gut. And there was something on the page, and I'm sure the same is for Denzel, but for me certainly, that meant that to be entirely present and allow anything, to feel like you were really just channeling, that's a rare experience for an actor. And I really felt like that very much with Denzel, and I think the two of us together felt in our scenes that that's what was occurring.
Yeah, there's a clarity to Dan's writing as well, like a very pure clarity for each scene that I feel like an actor could probably jump onto as well. You know what each scene and what line is about and for, and there's no questions about it. I mean, maybe there's stuff that was cut out that you had questions about, but as a viewer, it mean you could be a playwright in a lot of ways. It's very specific,
Very
every line.
efficient, yeah.
Can you talk about writing the dialogue for this? Because one of the things that I got a sense while I was watching it and listening to it was that it seemed like so much fun for you, the writer, doing the research, all this legal research, and then having a character who only relates to the world and people almost through the legal research that he's been doing his whole life. The way that he talks about his emotions and other people's emotions still has a kind of like a legal entry for him.
It's fun to find a character that has a specific voice. Like Lou in Nightcrawler, I very much imagined early on that he was speaking like quoting human resource manuals from corporations.
Yeah.
But that was fun. Like every time Lou opened his mouth, I could be going, it's a human resource manual from some Fortune 500 company that has no reference to what's going on. That was fun. But writing Roman was fun because he speaks his mind. And you can vicariously live through a character, just all the times that you would shut up to have a character speak. It was fun to write that, absolutely. Yeah.
That said, there's a lot of legal jargon consistently, even in just daily conversation for him, when it's not even seemingly applicable to the conversation.
Well, that was the research. I spent 6 months researching the legal system, down in the LA court system, which is horribly overburdened and unfair and unequal. And I had technical advisors helping me with that as well. And yeah, anytime you can throw legal, anytime you're writing a script that you can make it feel real, that's a good thing. And I very much believe, like even in Nightcrawler, I didn't know anything about TV journalism, but having people speak, you know, whatever they were saying, and then having the legal thing as well, it adds a level of, I like real films. I like films that look real, feel real, sound real, so I'm very big on throwing real world things into a film.
You know, going into researching this for 6 months at the in the LA court system, what sort of preconceived notions did you have about the criminal justice system, and what of those were sort of broken, or those were sort of reaffirmed for you?
I was deeply aware of how unfair and unequal it is. I remember the 1980s when they passed the Rockefeller laws here. So you could be doing a gram of blow on the east side and get caught, and you get 6 months and a slap on the wrist, and if you turn into crack, you're looking at 15 years, some mandatory sentence, utterly based on race, utterly based on socioeconomic equality. It's shocking that those laws got passed and only recently being repealed. So I go to LA, I knew quite a bit that this was not remotely a fair system from my point of view. So I started doing the research. The plea bargain reform thing was something I became very interested in, because everybody's talking about, we have 2.5 million Americans that are in jail, they're incarcerated. It's the highest rate of any Western civilization, the country by far. Why? Why is this? So you can say, oh, it's police, it's this, it's that. Well, a lot of people point to the prosecutors. It's these prosecutors who have no oversight, and you wind up in front of them, and they pull a sentence out of their hat and go, you either plead guilty or I'm gonna hit you with a hammer of a sentence. So many people are in jail pleading guilty to things that they're not guilty of because they didn't have their day in court. Who wants to gamble that? You know, even if you're innocent, who wants to take the risk of some 10-year sentence or something that's not even remotely equitable to what the crime was? So I'm very interested in that, reforming it.
Let's get some questions from the audience. Who has a question right here?
Hello. Dan, my question's for you. So your characters are quite eccentric, and then you also stated that I would like to see some of myself in the characters I write about. And since Denzel is all about the truth, could you please expand on how you perhaps relate a little bit to the plot or the character?
I think all of us are eccentric. I think all of us put on a face. We're all of us right here together in a social situation, and we're presenting ourselves one way. I am interested in putting a character under a microscope and following them home. And I think all of us we'd seem very odd if we were alone at home and doing the things that we do. So I'm fascinated by people. We're all like our own universes. We're these incredible, interesting things. And so I like to strip away the surface of how we present ourselves. The other thing is that we all present ourselves as strong and together. We're also fearful and vaguely weak. We're one phone call away from dropping to our knees. It's just such an interesting thing that we live in, and films so rarely present how vulnerable we are and how fearful we are. And I am very much into that, of presenting that. I think that feels real to me.
Yeah, me too. I think that's one common thread throughout all the characters that I play, actually, is that there is that real messy complexity. You know, as a woman in film, I'm very excited about bringing that to the screen, because I think women, you know, are often, weirdly, I think in this moment in time, women have been expected to present as strong always, as though that's the sort of PC thing to bring to screen. And actually, the strength in women often comes from the fact that they are in touch with their messiness and their vulnerabilities and their weaknesses at times. And I think Maya is very much presented in that way on the screen in this film.
Next question.
Hi, this question's for Dan. I wanted to say I'm a huge fan of your work, especially as a fellow Dartmouth alum. It makes me very proud. My question revolves around your writing process, especially when it comes to, well, like generally what it is, and also more specifically when it comes to editing and revising after your first draft. How do you approach that?
My writing process now is everything is about the idea. I think the mistake that a lot of writers make is they feel, I have to write, I'm not writing today, I got to sit down. That's not the way to do it. If you have a year to write a script, spend 10 months thinking of the idea. Something that after 10 months you get up at 4 in the morning, instead of going, I want to go back to bed, you go, I want to start working on that. Whatever it is. If you like horror movies, a horror movie that makes you excited. Something that's thematically, you know, politically important in your mind. Whatever it is. And because you can take a great idea and write it in finger paint and it will probably sell. But to take an idea that's marginal and not really working, you can format it properly, do every draft. It's just going to lay there. And don't make the mistake of rushing too quickly into writing. Ideas are hard to come by. I think I get one idea that I'm interested in maybe every couple years, and you got to roll with that. That's just what it is. And I'm revising as I'm going along, revising, yeah, heavily.
How do you go about, I mean, another film that you have a credit on as a screenwriter this past year was Kong Skull Island. How do you go from writing on sort of projects like that versus something that you're probably going to be directing?
I get a much bigger screen right away, bigger keyboard. No, it's, everything is bigger. Everything is bigger on Kong Skull Island. Kong Skull Island, I mean, I'm talking here about criminal justice reform, but like, I like to have fun.
Yeah.
I like to go to the movies and just lose it for a while. And the idea of a 100-foot Kong going up against, a Vietnam helicopter squadron. And that was fun, man. That was fun. The characters were fun.
Yeah, I mean, the same. Like, you can't always make it sort of, super earnest. No. And, your taste is sometimes, well, hopefully varied as an artist. Exactly. And so,
I meant as your writing process. I liked Kong Skull Island, guys. Why
are you trashing Kong Skull Island, man? Come on. There's going to be another one, by the way.
I enjoyed it.
I'm going to tell you what's going on here, but get ready.
I mean, if your process for a film like Roman J. Israel or Nightcrawler is every couple of years you get an idea that you latch onto, how is it for something like Kong Skull Island where you're hired to be a writer on this thing that's going to get made whether you're there or not?
The thing that I liked about Kong Skull Island was they were going like, it's set in 72 and a helicopter squadron is pulled over to Skull Island. And I thought, man, 72, like the music, the attitudes, that felt fresh to me. And once they came up with that, then it's like, you're on Skull Island, and you just start working it around, and this becomes fun. That was the idea. That's why I took that job, because I thought that was a cool idea. Sam Jackson was great as this sort of like helicopter guy, and the crews were cool. The costumes, the music was just a trip, which I loved.
I'd like to see you write something for Samuel L. Jackson. That would be kind of amazing.
I would like to see me do that as well.
All right, I think we have time for one more question.
Hi, so for you, Dan, I know this is being your second film that you directed. Did you feel comfortable being able to direct another film after the success of Nightcrawler?
Did having success make you comfortable?
Well, there was one route where I could have just retired and go, hey, man, I'm just that good. I did one. I don't have to do it anymore. And there's a lot of appeal to that. But I'm not that person. I'll be honest, I'm a total gambler in my life. I love to gamble. And I'm all about taking risks creatively. And so the idea of like stopping or not, I want to challenge myself. It's not about, it's about doing the same way.
No, for sure. I mean, yeah. I mean, you don't ever sit back on your laurels if you're an artist. Typically, you just, you're always craving some sort of satisfaction within yourself. So it's not necessarily the success of, the outside that sort of drives you in the first place. Typically. So I would think that, yeah, I'm glad he kept going and didn't stop after Nightcrawler.
Me too.
Denzel is that way, by the way. Denzel is definitely like, goes left one time, let's go right the next time. He's all about challenging himself. And I think that's what you're going to be seeing as long as he's working.
What was the greatest challenge for you in terms of writing and directing this?
The greatest challenge was that I wrote it on spec. I wasn't paid. I knew that Denzel, I did that by choice. I knew Denzel was the only person I wanted to have do it. If he didn't do it, I wasn't going to do the movie. So the greatest challenge was like sending it off to him and waiting for him to say, come to New York and meet with me right before Fences. And I sat down to lunch with him for an hour. I'm trying to figure out, like, are you going to do this? And after an hour, he goes, let's do this movie together.
Wow. What was that conversation like? Before he said...
That conversation is like probably what you have with directors. Like, you're getting to know each other, right? A lot of times you're not even talking about the material.
Yeah.
You're kind of like
what is your essence? Yeah.
Who are you, you know?
What motivated you?
Do I want to spend whatever amount of time working with you, you know?
It was essentially like he had basically decided that he was going to do it, and he wanted to make sure that he could sit with you for an hour and enjoy your presence. I'm not saying that as a joke.
Well, enjoyment on one level, certainly, but Denzel is a very astute, intuitive guy. When he's looking at you, he's looking at a lot of things. I mean, how do you carry yourself? How are you phrasing it? If I challenge something, how are you reacting to it? I mean, you're testing, he's testing, and legitimately, you should test, so.
Guys, I love the film. Congratulations. It opens this week, right? People can see it.
Wednesday.
Wednesday. Is it opening everywhere or is it limited?
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
Thanksgiving.
Do not have Thanksgiving dinner. That day you should go to the theater, bag the dinner, and go see the film. That's my advice.
I absolutely agree. Guys, give it up for Dan and Carmen. Let's hear it.
Thank you.